kind of the wilder and zanier the titles were, the better click rate we got. There was always a little bit of sexual innuendo to some of the things. Remember one for a holiday, we said, lamb, ham, thank you, ma'am, instead of wham, bam, thank you, ma'am.
Welcome to Content Kingdom. This is your backstage pass to the people, tools, and the trends shaping the future of content marketing.
And welcome to another episode of Content Kingdom. I am your host, David G. Ewing, and I'm calling you from Greenling, Ground Zero / Green, all sorts of things that you've done, Mason. And thanks for inviting me into your studio. So we're for those of you that can't see the screen, we're recording today from Mason's podcast studio. So it's great to be in your studio, Mason. And thanks for having me here. And thanks for being on Content Kingdom.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Nice, man. So for those that don't know Mason Arnold, I've known this guy for, 12, 13 years, Mason. So yeah. So Mason got his start with Greenling. And from a content perspective, you crushed it there with the newsletter that reached 100,000 or a million people. I can't remember how many people in Austin.
Just 100,000, but it was a local Austin newsletter that garnered subscribers from across the country because of the content we were doing.
Yeah. I mean, we have 700,000 people here, and it'd be crazy if 1 in 7 was reading your newsletter, but that was pretty sweet. From there, you went on to CC's Veggie Noodle Company, scoring number 3 on the Inc. 500.
Yeah.
That was pretty sweet. So that one blew up. That was a huge explosion. And now you've got a brand house, right? And it's small potatoes, and it's no small potatoes, I'll tell you that. So that's great. We can talk about all the cool things you're doing with content, because now you're just like a content monster, man. You're just off doing all sorts of things. So super excited to have you here. Let's get started, Mason. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about the first time you took a step into content and were like, hey, I'm going to try this. When was that?
The very first time my very first business was a landscaping company, and I started it. I was working as an engineer and for an environmental consultant company, and 2 reports came across my desk. One of them said that the number 1 pollutant to Texas waterways was residential fertilizer. And the second one was that organic and natural fertilizers were better in every measurable way they could do. As a 25-year longitudinal study, green grass, green faster, better, healthier. Everything was better organic. And I'm like, something's off here. And so I go down to Home Depot to check out the fertilizer section, and there's a chemical fertilizer guy there ready to give me recommendations. And I was like, well, what about that organic stuff over there in the corner? He's like, oh, that doesn't work. And I'm like, all right, this is a marketing problem, And so I set out to change that with a company called Earth Action Lawn and Landscape. And my very first thing that I did was marketing content. I created a flyer with some info about the differences between the two. And I went to this one neighborhood that was like a high-end neighborhood, 400 mailboxes. I spent all day, and I put one in every single mailbox. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit back and wait for the calls to come in.
Here we go.
The next day, I got one call. It was from the postman. He said, it's illegal to put postcards in mailboxes. I took every single one out. If I catch you doing it again, I'm having you ticketed or arrested or something. And so I was like, okay, that didn't work.
Swing and a miss.
And landscaping is a very word of mouth business. And so there's not advertising that you can even do. And so, what I did was really focus on content, both various different forms of content, different mediums, different areas. And then also I was one of the very first landscaping companies in Austin to have a decent website. And so from that website, we absolutely crushed SEO, and we were getting calls for commercial jobs. We got calls to be on TV to talk about organic landscaping. We very quickly became an authority in that industry because of the content that we had online.
That's amazing. So you were a pioneer back then. And just give me a feeling. How old were you at that time?
I was 25 years old.
24.
And it was in 2002. So websites weren't really easy to do at that time. But we figured out a cheap way to do it and a way to get some good content on there.
Yeah. That was back when mainstream media was a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we believed what we were told.
all right, great. So okay, so there's your first foray, and then I got to know how does one build a newsletter up to 100,000 people? Walk me through how long did that take? I got to know, how did that happen?
Yeah, so probably didn't even, well, I think from the outset of Greenling. So Greenling was, we said local organic delivery was our tagline. We started with a Meta CSA product, so different local farms together into one weekly box. And so we had to notify people what was in the box every week. And so every Friday we'd send out a notice. And then after a year, I'm like, God, I want to, people are asking all kinds of questions. Let's start including information about what's in the box and these items. And then noticing the open rates, and obviously because people were looking at what was coming in the next week, I'm like, all right, I've got some eyeballs here reading these things. Maybe I can do some, brand reinforcement, some education. And so we developed, I think, like 7 different buckets where it was like, straight information, local farm highlight, Greenling team highlight. So we had all these different buckets, and then we scheduled them all out. And so because we had, we were doing this weekly, and there was at least a decent amount of people that wanted that weekly information of what's in the local box. And then we do other specials and all kinds of things. That became a little bit of a platform. And then I just got kind of obsessed with open rates and click-through rates. And the titles I thought were very important. And that was real early in A/B testing. And so I would A/B test different titles. And I started to learn that the kind of the wilder and zanier the titles were, the better click rate we got. So we were doing some titles would get, there was always a little bit of sexual innuendo to some of the things.
Give me an example. What do you got?
There's lots for vegetables. And, I remember one for a holiday, we said, lamb ham, thank you, ma'am, instead of wham bam, thank you, ma'am. And so there were things like that. And some of them got quite a bit more risque. But a lot of times it was really just like we'd take puns, and melons were an easy target.
I mean, yeah, it's an obvious like joke, right? Bananas, like all these things have these obvious shapes, but I've never seen a food company with, like, I don't know, what would it be, the melons to really go after it like that?
Yeah.
So, what are we talking about in terms of like click-through rates? Like, if you had some provocative, risque, title for some of the food products, like, the headlines.
Yeah, some of our best
50% increase, 100%.
titles. It would be sometimes almost 100% increase.
Wow.
And sometimes the staff would be like, Mason, you're going too far. Just tell them what's going on. I'm like, all right, I'll do this every now and then. I do just a boring title, like, here's what's going on this week. And we'd get like 25-30% click through. And then I'm like, all right, going back to ham, lamb, thank you, ma'am.
Nobody likes cucumbers.
Yeah.
All right.
I think one of them was like the versatility of cucumbers, 10 uses you wouldn't expect. That one got a pretty good click-through rate.
All right. So do you think that's why, I mean, your area, so Greenling you were the CEO, and Greenling was a company that
my official title was Cookie Monster.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Cookie Monster. Yes.
Right.
And your delivery was not outside of Austin there was a point where you were in like Dallas and Houston, right?
Yeah. The last couple of years we expanded.
But this newsletter was going well beyond that. Do you think that it was because of the risque titles, or was there something else that was causing this to go wide?
I think I think I paid a lot of attention to balance, and, risque titles were great, but then sometimes it was about local farms. So the titles, I didn't always go for risque. Okay. It was like risque and then something very interesting local, like a local event, or I'm talking about farms, and then something risque again. And so I always tried to just keep a balance between all of the things, and then really started to lean into humor. Some sexual innuendo, but then also just trying to be actually funny, and some of them were just pretty hilarious. I read this article that when you're tired or hungover, you're actually more creative because your primary pathways are exhausted because you didn't get enough sleep. And so your brain tries different pathways and you end up with more creativity. And so I would lean into that sometimes and wake up with just 3 hours of sleep and go into the office and write the newsletter for that day. I always tried to plan ahead, but at the end of the day, it was Friday morning when I'd write them. But sometimes when I was like, I walk into the office and had done no planning, had no idea what I was going to talk about, but I just knew what the topics were and what I needed to do. And I'd bust out an amazing newsletter.
So you'd have like a Thursday night rager and then like a Friday morning brain flash.
Exactly.
You know what that reminds me of? So I'm just going to go off script for a sec here. Like, there was this story, I think it might be apocryphal, about like one of the greatest science fiction writers of the 20th century. This, I think it was I think Isaac Asimov. You know who Isaac?
Yeah.
So he wrote The Foundation, right? Which is this like mind-blowing story about people who can use math to predict the future. And I heard that he was hungover and had no sleep and realized that he needed to pitch something to his professors. Like, I guess he was in creative writing or something. And just was sitting by a fountain and was like, I need something quick. And that's what he came up with. And that became like, Hugo Award winning, legendary 20th century, best sci-fi that there is. So, all right. Okay. So you've fascinating. We now have 2 data points that, that getting hammered before writing content is the way to go. All right. Thank you for encouraging bad habits. Awesome. So, okay. So you crush it with Greenling. Now, I think there's another important point that I want to ask you about here, which is, if you're the CEO of a company, you only have so many hours a day, right? And so every CEO is trying to think, what do I delegate? What do I leave alone? What do I have to dominate and own? It sounds like you were pretty hands-on. So like, how much of your time as you were building Greenling did this occupy for you?
That's a good question. I have to think back, like as a percentage of my total time, I think it's probably never got above 10%. Okay. But I was extremely engaged with it. And the first time I tried to hand it off, we're like, oh, we're growing. You don't need to be writing the newsletter every Friday. Tried to hand it off. Click rate went through the floor. It was just like the personality and the voice wasn't there anymore. And so I took it back over. And then eventually, we got, private equity investment. And they were like, you really have to stop doing this. And I taught someone my voice, and they did a really good job of replicating my voice and took it over for a while. And then I think in the end, I took it back over just because I enjoyed it. And I'm like, you know what? I get enjoyment out of this content. So I don't care if I need to be doing other things. This like refills my battery.
All right. Well, that was sort of way before the days of AI. I wonder if AI could come up with a really great risque joke for cherries and pears. What do you think? So,
yeah, we had jokes about popping cherries.
Oh, geez. Okay. All right. It was all over the place. All right. So Greenling's a great success. And then you move on from there. And then it's time for CC's Veggie Noodles. And this is where I got to see you. I watched this rocket ship happen, right? I went from you, in your kitchen playing around with like a slicer spiralizer to having this company that's number 3 on the Inc. 500. It was an amazing rocket ship ride. Talk to me about content and how content was used to take you on this like explosive growth. So maybe you could tell the audience like a little bit about what really was the growth trajectory for CC's, and then we'll talk about how content played a part.
Yeah, and it was, I was coming out of Greenling, and Greenling was not a great exit. It was very stressful in the end. It was a very complex business model, and it was just hard for someone to step in and take over. And so I was dead set on simplifying my life, but that also led to simplification, even of communication and of content. And I'm like, how can we very simply drive home messaging? And so it was a I would say it was a fascinating experiment and exercise in messaging and getting down to exact words and how many letters were in the words, because on the front facing of a package, most people end up trying to put a bunch of features and benefits on it, and it's too busy and nobody notices it. And so we whittled it down to, I think other than the name of the company and the flavor of the vegetable noodle, there was only like 6 other words on an 8x5 front facing package. And we chose those words very carefully. And
those words were
simple but twisted, which those were 3 of the words. And then it said organic and gluten-free, which is,
that's all you need to know, right?
Yeah.
And, I remember how intentional you were about that. And it was a stunning package. I mean, it's a pack of noodles, right? Like, how stunning does the packaging need to be? But then you brought that package, and that was unbelievable. And those were, that was pretty incredible. It was something that, I knew you, so I would go into the store and be like, there it is, but even if I didn't know you, I'm pretty sure I would have looked at that package and done a double take because of, how arresting it was. It was very intentional.
Yeah, it was very fun. And, speaking of like how quickly it grew, like I didn't know what it's called, velocity, like how fast it moves on shelf. I didn't know what a good velocity was, what a bad one was. We launched in the Whole Foods Lamar store, and our zucchini noodles were selling 150 units per week. And I asked Whole Foods, I'm like, hey, is that good or bad? Like, should we be, what should we be doing? They're like, it's fine, don't worry about it. And I'm like, that's just a weird comment, and I wasn't satisfied by it. So I started calling around, and people were like, no, you're mistaken. That's across your like whole product line. When you're doing velocity for one SKU, you have to divide it by how many you have. And I'm like, no, that's zucchini. And they're like, well, then you must be talking about per month or something. I'm like, no, like I can show you the numbers, 150 units per week in this one store. And they were just like, holy shit. Like seasoned CPG investors and mentors. Yeah. And so, we knew we had something special pretty much right away. But then mainly the challenges in that company were operational scaling. And that was fun as well, but also extremely more capital intensive and time intensive. We had to build a whole facility. So for the first year and a half, we did 0 advertising. We didn't go to trade shows. We didn't even really answer the phone. We're just like, okay, just start making more, expand it, let Whole Foods know when we could handle more stores and expand. And so, we didn't do our first trade show until 2 years into doing it. And we already had, we went from the first year was like 250,000 in revenue. Year 2 was 5 million, and year 3 was 25 million.
Okay.
So
wait, that was 25.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah.
Nice.
250,000.
250,000. 5 million.
Yeah.
25 million.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize those were the numbers. That's incredible.
We went from 5 employees to 25 employees in the first year. And the second year, we went from 25 to 200 employees. We were just like, anyone can walk off the streets and come make noodles, go through the training process. We'll put you out there.
So the only content you did was like an employee handbook.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of fascinating, when we launched, I didn't have a website. The packaging designer was like, here's the package and here's all you need. Stationery. I was like, no, I need a package and I need a sell sheet to give to retailers. And that's all I need. And she's like, what? Like, no, like you need a website. I'm like, nobody's going to the website of a like brand new startup where discovery is literally on the shelf.
Yeah.
And so over time, then we created the other content, but kept that like just simplicity of message and, trying to just be really, engaging with it.
Well, that brings up a good point though, too, because when it comes to content for food products, like I've never been, I like Oreo cookies. I've never been to the Oreo. I don't even know if Oreo has a website.
Right.
Why would I go to the Oreo cookies website?
Yeah.
Or I like, steaks. I've never looked at a steak website ever in my life.
Yeah.
So,
And
Okay.
we'd hire marketers and they'd be like, well, I think the website needs a revamp. And I'm just like, okay, you're not getting hired.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like nobody goes to it.
So in food, the key thing then is the package. Everybody knows that, right? So the package is the key thing. Is there any other content that you feel is like a key piece of food content marketing?
I think it depends on the food and the category. New entrants and new products that require customer education need a lot of social podcasts, however different, all the different formats you can create to get education out there, you have to do, because it's hard and we're inundated with content these days. And so to get through the fold, there's the hook and then there's the capture. And the hook is the attention grabber and get them looking and get their attention. And then the capture is holding them with engaging content.
Got it. So hook them with your sexual innuendo and then engage them with the deliciousness of your product. So
yeah, exactly.
Got it. Pretty good winning formula, which I mean, that's the really funny thing, because of all the content about you, if somebody Googles your name, the best content they have is like this whopping, hey, I'm number 3 on the Inc. 500. And there you go. You've got this like great piece of content, and it was for the business where you didn't need a lot of content. So, all right.
Yeah. And it does capture the attention. It creates like automatic credibility. And, there's some luck involved. I mean, we created a phenomenal thing, and then the actual scaling of it was a lot of hard work. But there's a lot of people who have amazing companies and have put in amazing hard work. But that piece of content is dramatic, just absolute dramatic difference in, the path of someone like me.
Got it. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that was stunning. And you were on a rocket ship ride there for a while. So, okay. So moving off of the CC's rocket ship, what comes next?
So I left CC's in 2021. I had hired a president to run the company. I moved to marketing. COVID hit. Budgets got slashed. I'm like, okay, well, we're not really doing anything, so I'll go ahead and step aside. Stayed on the board through the acquisition, but left. Took some time off for the first time in my life. We took an RV trip around the Western U.S. and I've found it fascinating how easy it was to stay busy with nothing to do. But after about 3 months, I was already like, my brain was just started spinning on what's next, and held myself back, was like, no, don't do it right away when you want to. But after about a year, we actually, my wife and I launched a podcast called Mostly Green Life. And what we were trying to do was make conservation and environmentalism more fun and approachable. It had started to be politicized quite a bit. And we were like, there doesn't need to be politics involved. It's like there's real easy data and research that shows that we should take care of this earth. It's the only one that we have. And so we had a blast doing a podcast for, I think, about a year. I think we did it for a year. And so that was a whole new medium, a whole new style of content.
Podcast, by the way. I loved Mostly Green.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. We, out of the podcast, we met some people with some really cool science, and we moved into our next startup from that. And then also Jessica just didn't enjoy podcasting as much as I did. Yeah. And I needed a partner, and I thought her voice was great in it. And she always asked such great questions and stuff. So the podcast has been simmering, and every 6 months I threatened to bring it back up. But it was fascinating to learn about that type of content, because it's another type of content. And we would, the podcast was a long form. We'd do transcripts and make sure they're had the right headings for SEO and put them on the page. And then we'd chop it up into YouTube shorts, and then, reels and such. And so thinking about content in that way of like, here's a big piece of content, how many little pieces of content can we get? Or like, where are the real punchlines in the content, was something that is very different from, I think, written content.
I'd be your podcast partner if you'd have me, but my voice isn't nearly as good as Jessica's. So I don't think when I tried to do the innuendo puns with you, it would land as well. So.
Maybe just modulate your voice. I'm sure AI could.
We could definitely do that. I'm up for that, especially if I get to use his equipment. This equipment's fantastic. So
Yeah,
that's awesome. Great. Okay. So yeah. So walk me through then. What was the impact for you of Mostly Green? So you do this, you get this thing launched. I remember you spent a lot of time thinking about the launch of it, and it was very popular. I mean, it shot up pretty fast, right? So how did that go?
It went okay. I felt like we got a lot of followers and we got a lot of subscribers, but then we really struggled with engagement, and so I just don't know if that I know that we should have been more proactive in it and reaching out and sparking conversations with with audience and with other people. And I think we were just busy enough that we struggled to focus on the engagement. And
Okay.
so it kind of faded because we'd do some episodes and they'd get some great quality content, would get some good engagement, but it was still just like it always felt like we were pushing on it and it wasn't something that was snowballing. And so if I were to do it over again, I would really focus on that engagement and like who are the fanatical listeners and the people that we want to interact with, both to help make the show better, but then also potentially to bring them on and to highlight other pieces of content.
All right. Note to self. So those of you that are big Content Kingdom fans, interact with me. I'll talk to you. I won't do what Mason did. All right.
All hosts want to be reached out to.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that would be a blast. I'd love to hear about how poor I am as a host and find out what I could do better. So yeah, go ahead, trolls. Come get me. So great. Okay. So you've done all that. That's really great. And so now you have a brand house, right? Mm-hmm. So walk me through Small Potatoes and what's going on with the brand house.
Yeah. So after we did it was a dog food business with some really deep science behind it that took us forever to figure out. And by the time we figured it out, it was like just about to finally get some wheels under it. And, our partners wanted out. And so we went into some struggle there. And so I peeled out, did some consulting with small CPG companies, reacquaint myself with the landscape, try to get a pulse on trends. One trend that I saw was that I knew capital markets were going to dry up for CPG. I had been through that cycle before with rising interest rates. It's one of the first industries to get cut out of investment portfolios. And so I tell everyone that I was talking to and advising and be like, y'all should really kind of focus on cash because it's going away. And they're like, no, we're going to raise money in 12 months. We've got a great trajectory.
This is going to last forever.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, like you're not. Like, yes, we are. I'm like, okay, there's going to be some distressed companies soon because at least at the time, I was confident that these people who were burning cash and thought they were going to raise money in a year were not going to be able to raise money. And then I also did some self-reflection at what I enjoyed most. And when it's a one small company, Greenling was fascinating because it was so broad. It was food and it was all food because it was groceries. So there's so many topics to write on and so much content opportunities to create.
Many jokes.
And so many jokes, never ending jokes. But, one company making one product, it gets a lot harder. And like that dog food business actually scripted and produced our main video, which was 2.5 minutes. And it was an absolute blast and it was hilarious. And that's actually a fun piece of content. And we had a little puppy and I trained the puppy leading into it to do different things. So it was a blast.
So what could the puppy do?
It would chase, which all dogs chase, but for a puppy to like in the shot chase.
Yeah.
And then we got it to lick
just the right time. Yeah.
We got it to lick a computer screen because there's a joke about it.
Oh, cute.
And we were in a board meeting and it had a tie on and everything. And Jessica was like, well, and so that's what there's like, Ellie, are you licking the computer screen again? But anyway, so then the brand house, I was like, I want to be able to do this more, which means more than one product. And then also just looking back at what I had done best in my career. It was really operational design and production scaling and kind of innovation in that realm. So I was like, I'm going to combine all these things. We are going to acquire a portfolio of small food companies that we think have great products or doing great things, but have founders who are burned out and wanting to get out of it, or landed in a real cash crunch and there wasn't really options for them anymore. Anytime, having been a founder, it's tough to go to someone and be like, I mean, I think I can take over this business, but I can't give you money for this business. That's we're going to have to invest in the business to try to turn it around.
Yeah.
And so that could often be a hard conversation. And I'm like, look, if you can go raise money, go do it. And I'll introduce you to investors, but if you can't raise money, come back and let's have a talk, because I can at least, save the brand. Yeah. And so we have acquired 6 companies in the last year and a half. We flipped one and sold one that we didn't want to, we liked it, but we had to help fund the facility that we built out. And so now we're in a position where we've got a bunch of different brands in different categories, and we're innovating products on them, and we're starting to create more content. Everything's omnichannel at this point. And so we've got all these different moments of engagement with customers across categories, and we're just having a blast.
And what does that mean? So if you're omni-channel, we were just talking about how with CC's, nobody went to the website, right? Everybody just, saw the product and was, interrupted by the stunningness of the packaging. But now you're omni-channel. So what's changed, and what are you doing with these brands now in the brand house?
Yeah, it's a fabulous question. So if you hit the shelf in a retailer and you're flying off the shelf and you can repeat that for years, that's a unicorn. It's great. And that's all you need to do. To be resilient, though, there are lots of brands who grow super fast and then something happens and they hit just one barrier and it takes them down and they disappear because they had been consuming cash that whole time. It's expensive to grow. Mm-hmm. And so growing fast is even more expensive. And so it's very risky. And having done that kind of rocket ship before, I recognize the moments where I was I was afraid of COVID months before it shut down the US. As soon as I knew that it was contagious before you showed symptoms, I'm like, whoa, this is bad. Yeah. And I went to my team and was like, I think we need to prepare for this thing. And they kind of laughed at me. And, and then later it was a Black Swan event. Is that one of those?
Yep.
And so
Blindside.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do now with these brands, because they're killer products, they're great products, great stories, is make them resilient. And so the way to be resilient and able to handle both market movements, but also relationship movements, supply chain movements. If you lose a buyer in your major retailer and the new buyer doesn't like you, that's just kind of it. If you're not performing extremely well and the buyer wants to try something else, then you're out, and that can be a huge hit to your revenue. So making all these companies omnichannel is going through D2C, Amazon, there's online marketplaces, online distributors, retail distribution. So everywhere that there's a sales channel that we can do profitably, we do it.
Okay. And it sounds like a lot of those non-retail sales channels are where you need more content in order to be relevant and pop up so that you can be more resilient.
Yep. Exactly.
All right. That makes a lot of sense. Well, let's take a look, Mason, at some of Mason Arnold's greatest hits. I've got a few things that I want to share with the class here. So let's go ahead and pull up the screen. I'm going to probably screw this all up, but let me see if I can get this done without turning this into
recording ended.
I know. Yeah. Here we go. That's it. Thanks, Cal. Okay, there's the infinite window. Get rid of that. And okay, cool. So, all right. Oh, you know what? Well, we're going to talk about the puzzle in a minute. But first, let's go to masonarnold.com. This is obviously, whoa, look how we got a younger Mason Arnold here. So,
that's right.
All right. So walk me through, why do you have masonarnold.com? What's the purpose of this in the pantheon of your companies and products?
Yeah, so I created that I think a few years into CC's, and one of the things that I kind of struggled with the success of CC's was people um, assigning like attributes and character to me that they don't know me and like I didn't earn. And so I was meeting a ton of people, and I wanted somewhere to point people to say, like, if you want to learn about me, this is me. And it's not just the CC's, the last quarterly sales. And so I've made a site that encompasses all the things that I enjoy. And it's I consider myself an artist. I'm an aspiring artist who has to be an entrepreneur to pay for my creative endeavors. And so this was just another kind of creative outlet to be like, here's, the things that I've done, and here's what I'm interested in. And, if you want to engage with me on the things that I'm doing now, like, come here and learn about them, and then let's, have a talk.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. And there's the ink thing, which is amazing. And then you've got just out of curiosity, I've not signed up for your personal newsletter. What happens here with this personal newsletter?
At the moment, not much.
Okay.
Anytime I had like a new project that I was working on, sometimes I'd send out an email. It was mostly just an email, not so much a newsletter. And like, here's a new project that I'm working on. And so people who just wanted to follow what I was up to could learn about it there. And then I'd have links. And one of the ideas was that, maybe these people could also be early adopters of things that I'm, doing, because a lot of what I do is in, similar kind of things. Most of it's around food.
Okay.
And everyone's got to eat.
So let's talk about some fun food. Everybody loves cookies. And here we've got, I think this is pretty sweet. Your latest cookie here is pretty good. So this is a GLP-1 boosting cookie. And for those that aren't like recognize GLP-1, that's like Ozempic, right? Like that's the category with all this stuff that's what GLP-1 is, right?
Well, technically GLP-1 is something that our body makes. And so it's a glucagon-like peptide that our intestines make to signal to our brain and the rest of our body that we're full, or that we've eaten nutrition. And so it was discovered in the 80s, this peptide, and then started to be studied in the 90s. And initially, all of the studies were around sugar and diabetics, because it does help curb sugar cravings. And it actually, the GLP-1 itself helps regulate blood glucose, because it's signaling that we ate. And so that signals some other things to like kick in insulin and be like, okay, there's body processes that need to happen. And so it's a fascinating compound. And recently they kind of discovered they were prescribing synthetic GLP-1 to people with diabetes for blood sugar control. And they noticed that pretty much everyone was losing weight on it. So then people started to take it off script just for weight loss. And that's when it exploded. And the last number that I heard was that 15 million people are on prescription GLP-1.
15 million?
15 million.
Wow.
People.
Wow.
And it has it's done some damage to food categories. And one of the biggest victims of the Ozempic wave is sweet snacks.
Okay.
And desserts. Right. And so I'm like, we just bought these cookie companies. And so I started to really dig in. And one of the things that's most concerning to most people about the synthetic GLP-1s like Ozempic or tirzepatide is that you have to stay on them forever. The data shows that as soon as you stop taking it, you gain the weight back. And I'm like, whoa, that sucks. I'm happy for these people who found a way to shed the weight, but I think it sucks that they have to be on it for the rest of their life. And
I don't think I read that footnote. I haven't tried it yet, but man, that's a bummer.
And there's some real downsides to that. And we don't know what they are yet because it's so new and so many people just force the market to bring it to market.
Mm-hmm.
So in my research, I'm like, okay, well, what can we do about this? And then I discovered that they are starting to discover compounds that naturally boost our GLP-1 naturally, our own GLP-1 in our body, more so than other things. And certain compounds can do it, and certain foods can do it as well. And so even for people that are on a synthetic GLP-1, something that boosts their natural GLP-1 both makes it more effective and could potentially down the road. I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. But, the goal with, I think, this whole category of foods is to find ways to help people change their habits and be able to get off of the synthetic GLP-1 by reinvigorating their own GLP-1 system.
So the pitch here is stop taking Ozempic and start eating cookies.
I am not a doctor, and this is not medical advice. But the tagline that I landed on was "A cookie a day keeps the cravings away," and I found it really exciting to be able to deliver something like this in cookie format, because it's like literally what caused the problems for people. Often it could be eating way too many cookies, but in doing that, by having a cookie that changes both the the impact of that cookie and then also the emotional connection to that cookie, I think could be really powerful.
Fantastic. We could keep talking about chipmunk and small potatoes in the brand house, but I think you've made your point there. And there's this new turn that you've had, and I want to ask you about it because it is unique, and it's not even like it's not even in the realm of how you're making money. You're just doing this. And that's, I'm referring to the puzzle. And so tell everybody what the hell is this thing that you're calling the puzzle? What's this all about?
Yeah. How much time we got?
We got some time. We got a couple minutes here. We got until we're boring, and we're done. So let's keep going.
Yeah. So I try to follow intuition. I believe, because the things that I talk about when I talk about the puzzle, to me, are a little too fantastical for me. Even like hearing myself talk about it, I'm like, I'm not the kind of person that does this. But so I'm an engineer. My brain is very logical. I look for explanations for everything, and I think a lot of the things that we think are magic are things that we just don't understand yet. But I also believe that our perception of our own reality is limited by this, bone encasing we have holding a little meat sack, and that the odds of this meat sack in our heads being able to perceive all the things around us are pretty low. So I think there's a lot of things out there that we don't understand because we're not capable of perceiving it. Mm-hmm. So that's like the lead in to, I don't find myself guided by mystical, really anything at all. But I believe you were there for this night. It was an EO event, entrepreneurs organization, gathering of some people. We had, a cigar, and I came home and I was like, my head was just in a little bit of a weird place, and it was summertime, hot out. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go float in my pool. And I grabbed a glass of wine.
Now, were you hung over at this point, like per our earlier story, or you were just on your way?
You just on my way. I think I was
here comes the creativity.
Yeah, just a little bit tipsy.
Okay, all right.
And I had half a cigar left. And
all right. There we go.
I go into my pool, and I have a little floaty. So I'm floating on my back. I'm balancing a glass of wine on my chest, cigar in one hand, and I ended up grabbing my phone.
It's quite a scene.
My phone was in the other.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think the fact that physically that state was really hard to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I entered some kind of flow state by just like, if I move too much, I'm going to topple over.
Yeah.
My phone's going to die. My wine's gone. Cigar's gone. And
high stakes.
And this vision just started being, in retrospect, it felt like it was being downloaded. I was like, most of everything that has happened like inside my brain, I can point to where in my brain. I actually studied brains for a long time. after I had a traumatic brain injury. And so I spent a lot of time digging into how the brain works, how to heal the brain, and the different mechanisms of it. And so most of the things that happen, even like deja vu and things, I'm like, oh, that's my brain predicting something, and it predicted it before I consciously perceived it, and that feels like deja vu. So most of the stuff in my brain, I can point to, I can figure out how my brain came up with it. I couldn't figure out how my brain came up with this vision, but it's a way to look at the world that transcends religion, transcends spirituality. It's just a framework that we can use to be our best selves. And so to bring more of ourselves to the world and to show up in both a more authentic way, but also more fully. Because I think a lot of the goals that we set for ourselves, someone else teaches us, here's how you set a goal. Now go just think of stuff. And like, we don't, think of stuff like that. I think that in and of itself leads to the majority of people with goals that aren't necessarily aligned with their true self, their intuition, just like the way that their brains and bodies want to be in the world. And so the puzzle is this framework of engaging in the world and then backing up to reflect on it, which we call, placing the puzzle pieces or creating the puzzle pieces that allows us to better understand what our mind and our body wants to do. We can try things and then feel how we react to it and be like, you know what, maybe I don't really want to do this thing. And so rather than spending a year going down this career path and then feeling miserable and be like, oh, I don't know how to change it anymore, like we can get better feedback on what, essentially how our brains want to show up in the world. And so this entire framework came to me in this one, I have no idea how long it was. I was just furiously typing. I would type and then I would go back into my brain, and it was coming to me visually as I was walking through this kind of tunnel that was a puzzle, and pieces were, coming, and some were falling away and some were like on fire and red. And, so I was just like writing what happened. And then later I started to think about it and have conversations with people like you about like, well, what would this mean? And you're like, wow, that sounds like, entropy, and like maybe we're battling these. And I'm like, oh, and so over time, a lot of it is pieced together. I think there's still just a ton to learn about it and to learn about how we can use it. But, immediately after, it was crazy at the end of the vision, at the end of it, I was like, so that's it. Like one of the most powerful things I think we can do to grow ourselves, to grow our impact in the world, to grow our fulfillment is actually to help other people with their puzzles. And because we have so many pieces, we have so many skills, we all have so many skills and so many talents, but we can only use them a limited amount. But other people, we can gift them to other people, and we can help them on their path and on their puzzle so much easier than them going out and trying to figure that all out. And so if we're all looking out for each other, the village, all these, there's lots of both analogies and like historical precedent for this, of that, as if we work together as a unit, we're all like dramatically better than going on our own. And at the end, I was like, okay, is that it? Because there were a bunch of like missing pieces. And I'm like, well, what about this? And then something would come to me, and I'm like, well, what about something doesn't seem right about this other section? That would come to me. And then I was like, is this it? Or like, are we done? And my keyboard disappeared on my phone. And I'm like, that's a little strange. And then I look up and the text disappeared, and there was just a white screen. And I'm like, I think this maybe, and then my phone died. And I'm like, all right, we're done.
We're done. Okay. So let me recap that a little bit. So here you are, you're floating in your pool.
Yeah.
You got your laptop, you got your phone.
Just phone.
Oh, just phone. Okay.
Phone,
so you're
cigar, and wine.
You got your phone, cigar, and wine. Okay. All right. So now I got the picture. So you're sitting there, and it's night, and you're out there and a little tipsy, and this, like, I don't know, I guess we call it like a spiritual download comes like just flying into your brain, right?
Yeah.
Out of the blue. And you're just like, what the hell is this? There's burning puzzle pieces, there's other things. But the gist of the idea is, hey, in life, it can be like a puzzle. And we're going to get some pieces that just don't fit. And maybe we just have to hand those to someone else. And there are other pieces that if we're just open to it, that other people have that kind of fit. And it's kind of fun to put together, but my puzzle connects to your puzzle.
Yeah.
And, we kind of all are working on our pieces, and we're here for a limited period of time. And as we snap things together, that's what we got. And then when we're done, we've made this really cool tapestry, and then, the phone goes dark, and that's it. Right.
Yeah. But then our puzzle lives on through the people that we connected with and the people that we touched.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful metaphor, and it's a cool idea. And so here's what's different about you, Mason, though, is a lot of people might have an idea, right? Maybe it was a spiritual experience or someone else, but not everybody has the courage to go write it down and throw it on social media. Right? So let's take a look at what you've done. And in like 6 short weeks here, you've started to, write about this, and you've had a huge take rate. Like, I mean, people are into this, and let's take a look at what's going on with the puzzle and walk through this. So, all right. So we're going to come back here to Chipmunk. Nope. We're coming over to LinkedIn. So, okay. So you have a newsletter, and it's called The Puzzle.
I also have a Substack, the puzzle.life, but
okay.
I think LinkedIn organizes it a little better.
Yeah. Yeah. This is how I saw it. Is I came across this in the first thing and thought this was incredibly courageous. I mean, these are very raw, very authentic things. I mean, the very first thing is this new tattoo. You've got chop wood, carry water. And you've written a really, kind of, I would say, a very beautiful essay about what this means.
Thanks.
And, and then your other post, and I commented on this one, who are we without our memories? And this is where you talk about that really traumatic brain injury you had, which by itself takes a lot of courage to write about that. But, people are resonating with this. I was watching this and I was like, okay, Mason put out this newsletter. Let's see if anyone's interested. I know Mason, I'm very interested in this, but there's like 500 people who are now instantly subscribed and are kind of hanging on every single one of these posts. So talk to me about the courage here, because I think that's one of the things that, I'm just going to stop for a second and say, I've interviewed a lot of people on this podcast, and the recurring theme over and over again is sometimes you got to have the cherries to like really dig in deep and put some content out there that's either vulnerable or just a little bit unusual. It's not, and worry about being judged. And yet you've done this. So talk to me about this. Like, you just started this a few weeks ago, and what made you start on just doing this? Like what's behind this?
Yeah. I mean, I got goosebumps just thinking about it. I felt, the fact that this thing was given to me in the way that it was, and that I have applied it to my life. And because the actual vision, I think at this point was 1.5 years ago. And so then I started applying it to my life, and that's where Small Potatoes came from. And we've done like all this work and this amazing, and things have been clicking, and it's been an amazing path. And, I feel like I hear, like, even me saying it that way, though, I that's the way people's stories start, where often I call it like an ego journey, and they're like, okay, well, now I'm going to give it to the world, and that's going to make me famous, I think is underneath, sometimes a lot of the motivation. So it was really hard. The hardest part for me about putting this out there was like, I'm not monetizing this. I imagine I probably never will, because what I want to do, I genuinely think that at some point it's going to get in the hands of someone, and this perspective will help them start to click in their life. And then I think it'll come back to me, and they may come back and help me with my puzzle. And so my goal is to grow everyone's puzzle. And I want to do that try to do it in a really responsible way, where I'm not falling into ego traps around it. But it's also, saying all of that at the same time, like, I was just terrified that literally nobody would care. And so, what got me over the hump of I don't think anyone's going to care about this. Why would anyone care about it? Was just I remember a part in the vision where it was showing me how, helping other people with their puzzles helped everyone, but the impact that it could have on them, and in particular is my kids in that part of the vision, and that if I was more present with them and used the presence exercises like chop wood, carry water in my time with them, and really focused on helping them grow and turn into adults, that in and of itself would make it all worth it. And so my kids haven't read. I've told them I'm doing this thing, but I have not, neither asked them to read it or said anything about it yet. At some point, all the thoughts will come together in a book, and I may ask them to read the book. I may not. I don't know, but I want to keep helping them with their puzzle.
Here's what I find really remarkable about this is we live in a world now where, people are using content strategically. This whole point of this podcast is Content Kingdom, is to talk about how people use content. And what I find really interesting about this is in this world where almost all content is done for some kind of commercial gain, here you are with content that you really, from what I can tell, couldn't give a fig about content. Notice the pun there. But this actually might take off and be, some of the most interesting things. And yet you had to drop your ego, and you don't even have a motivation to make money with this content. And yet people are taking to it. And I'm wondering if that's part of what makes people resonate with this is the kind of that's so unusual that that just doesn't exist anymore. So yeah, I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
So,
and I try to be clear. I think probably 3 times at this point, I've been like, I'm not trying to make money off of this. I don't want anything from any of you off of this. I'm just sharing this, and with the goal that it helps. And then whatever happens.
Yeah. Here's some puzzle pieces. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. All right. Well, Mason, this has been a fantastic journey. When you think about what's coming next, what comes to mind? Like, what are you thinking about in terms of next evolution of content for you, for the puzzle, for masonarnold.com, for Mostly Green, for, small potatoes, and for cookies? Like, where's the content going? What are you thinking is coming next?
Yeah. Part of the puzzle that resonates so well with me, because I have been to these workshops, and they're like, create goals. And, with this group of entrepreneurs that we meet with every month, we have these annual goals. And in the 15 years I've been making annual goals, I feel like I never hit any of them, but then I do other really cool stuff. And I'm like, okay, what is wrong with this? And so, one of the central points of the puzzle is we, rather than goals, it's like, what are we focusing on? And so what are the parts of our person and our life do we want to give our energy to, and what that means is we have to not give energy to other things. And so it's about, focusing on those parts of the puzzle that we want to build out. And then we chop wood, carry water, and then we engage in the day, and we move through the day and see where it takes us, knowing that the path is not prescribed. We're wanting to focus on areas and build out the things that we enjoy, and the things that, make us feel fulfilled and make us feel connected to other people. And so I feel like I'm doing all of that. I do feel, there's a constant struggle of is it too much? Am I spread thin or not? But I find when I'm able to really chop wood and carry water, I can build a lot of different areas, and it all seems to click. Now, in terms of just content, my vision for content is more continuity between it all. And I want to pick back up the Mostly Green podcast. And so I think content created by humans is going to find more value over time. And I think those of us like you and the other guests on this podcast that are realizing the value of content and content that we are creating are building the library that leads to greater trust and greater credibility, so that as we are overwhelmed with AI content, that everyone's able to kind of get through the noise and find the signal, because the signal is between each other.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I think that, to your point about what people are hungry for, no one is saying, give me more AI content, right? Everyone's like, yeah, I don't have to create content. I could use AI. But no, there's nobody on the other side going like, man, you know what I want to do? I want to get on LinkedIn today and see some artificial stuff, said nobody ever. And so it is.
I don't really want their thoughts. I want their thoughts fed through a machine.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Just give me more fake stuff. Yeah. And I think that's really great. So, where I'd like to wrap this up is, you mentioned your mantra, chop wood, carry water. It's the latest article in your newsletter. Tell us all about what chop wood, carry water means.
Yeah. So the shortest version, there's just essentially a quote. It's like, how do you reach enlightenment, chop wood, carry water? What do you do after enlightenment, chop wood, carry water? Now, enlightenment is I think a very much a triggering word. I think when they're talking about enlightenment, it's really just about presence. And so it's a parable. It's a Buddhist parable about a young monk in a village, and the elder monk is up in the hill or somewhere, and the young monk's job, all he has to do is chop wood, carry water every day. He's not like learning things, and he finally goes to the elder monk and was like, and the elder monk was like, you look upset, talk to me about it. He's like, all I do is chop wood, carry water. I need to be learning. I need to be doing this. I need to be doing that, so that I can someday become like you. And the elder monk was like, well, I did all of those things, and here I am. And what I've realized is that it's all chopping wood and carrying water. And the lesson is that if we're mindful in the things that we do, then all of the things are the same. And that we can, a simple task like chopping wood or carrying water can become fulfilling and can become this wonderful experience if we bring our entire selves to it and if we're present for it. And so that's the simple lesson of the parable.
Nice. It's funny, what that makes me think of is, I got started in tech because I liked writing code, right? And so I wrote all this code and I built all these things, and then I got too big for that, and I was like, well, now you got to be the entrepreneur and you got to do this. So what do? Well, I hire a bunch of coders, and they write all this code, and we build software and all this stuff. And then when I have a free moment, like, what am I doing? And it's like, well, I'm gonna go play around and just write some code. And that's my chop wood, carry water.
Yeah, and in that vein, I with almost the exact same kind of story was that my first company was landscaping, and man, there were moments out there, beautiful day, the grass is green, it had rained, and we're like creating these amazing landscapes and lawns, and it really was. I was like, this is amazing. And then as I progress in my career, I'm like, well, now like mowing the lawn is a low skill work. And so that's the thing I need to hire out so that I can do more high skill work. And so I was always searching for the highest and best use of my time. And then a couple of years ago, my son got old enough for like, I mowed the lawn when I was a kid. And I was like, I want him to mow the lawn. And so we fired our lawn service, and then he's not around all the time, and I didn't want to, a bunch of long grass. So I got out there and was mowing it every now and then as well. And I was like, I'm having so much fun. And so came back full circle, to, now I do a lot of my own landscaping and I love it. And it becomes a Zen thing that then I go do all the work that's, less fun.
Nice. Just don't put any flyers in anybody's mailbox.
That's right.
Yeah.
Don't you dare. It's illegal.
Awesome. Mason, if people want to share their puzzle pieces with you, or or get some puzzle pieces from you, how do they interact with you? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
My email is me@masonarnold.com, or thepuzzle.life is the Substack with the puzzle, or if you search for Mason Arnold on LinkedIn or the puzzle on LinkedIn, you can find it there. And my website, masonarnold.com.
Excellent.
Get in touch.
Mason, thank you so much for being on Content Kingdom. This has been a ton of fun, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Got it. Who is the influencer / celebrity / guilty pleasure that you don't want to admit that you follow?
Ooh.
Do you follow The Rock? I follow The Rock. So
I mean, it'd probably be some hot model.
Somebody with melons.
Yeah.
All right. So yes, the fruit kind, of course. Describe the worst photo of you ever. You got a nasty baby picture out there?
No, I think it's fairly cute as a baby. I think I was in some other country. I was overweight, completely out of shape, and like drunk, and it's me like laying on the ground in filth, and I'm like, wow, that is not what I want to represent.
That's not me winning right there.
Yeah.
All right, I'm skipping all the favorite ones because so
You can still try them. It's just going to be a little.
Okay, if you're game for it, then I got one more. Favorite author?
I'm going to go with Viktor Frankl.
Ooh, nice. Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude, I was just listening to somebody talk about that the other day, and I love that book. How many more years until AI eliminates the need for all websites?
Never.
Never, he says. All right. And with that, we're out of here. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.